Hey guys, Andy here from Mediocre Hobbies, coming at you with a video that has been requested hundreds of times, and that is how do I prime my miniatures and what tips and tricks do I have to help you guys to prime your miniatures a little bit better. So that's what I'm going to do in today's video. First off, I'm going to show you guys me spraying my miniatures, the technique that I use, the paints that I use, how it all works, and the reasons why I do it. Then Laura has very graciously compiled a list of the most common questions I get under videos about spraying, and I'm going to answer all of them in today's video. There's about 5 or 6 of them, and we're just going to make sure that they're all covered so you guys have a better understanding of my thought process when it comes to priming miniatures. So hopefully you guys are excited by this, and hopefully you learn something. Before I jump away and go and start the priming process, I just want to say a huge thank you to everyone out there that supports me in all the myriad of ways it is possible to support me, whether it is by doing what you're doing now, which is watching my videos, liking, commenting, making sure that you're subscribed, are all huge things to help support the channel. And if you want to help even more, then obviously things like becoming a channel member or joining the Patreon is the most important way to do that. So for all you guys out there have taken that step, thank you from the bottom of my heart. Without you guys, I cannot continue doing what I'm doing. So thank you. Okay, let's dive in and start the priming process. Okay guys, the first thing that I am going to do is I'm going to show you guys the basic coat of black that I like to get on all my miniatures before I do the Zenithal spray. So this is a glorious Great Unclean One model. I thought it would make a perfect example to show you guys how to spray. I have a bunch of other examples and a bunch of other stuff I'm going to show you as well, but we're going to start with this. So I'm going to be using Colour Forge's matte black. Most of the time I use Games Workshop, but this has fallen into my lap over the last little while. It's now available in Ireland, so I'm going to be giving it a try. Yeah, all I'm looking for is a solid black coat with this guy. So I'm going to go around and make sure that I don't miss any kind of nooks and crannies. I want an entire solid coat of black. And because it is a model spray, it's quite thin, so you can be less nervous about it clogging up the detail on your model. Why am I mentioning that? We will get to that a little bit later, but that is important. Even when it looks like you've kind of oversprayed your miniature, you have not. Looks shiny, and it looks like there's loads of spray on it, but just give that a few minutes to dry, and we are going to be good to go. So that is a solid coat of black on that miniature. There is no grey plastic showing through, and that is an important step. Make sure there is no grey plastic showing through on your model. Okay, so this is our Great Unclean One. As you can see, it is sprayed black, very matte black. And now I'm going to hit it with the Colour Forge Ghoul Grey, which is a light grey. Normally I go for Grey Seer from Games Workshop, but like I said, I'm playing around with these Colour Forge cans and having a go of them because they're available in Ireland now, so it's pretty handy for me. Like I said, this is where people talk about the kind of Zenithal spray, as you can see spraying behind me, to clear the nozzle. Talked about this a bunch before. You should never just pick up your can, shake it, and then spray at your model. There's a tube inside of your can that goes from the top all the way down to the bottom. And basically the last time you sprayed it, there is paint still inside that tube, and that paint will dry. So then the next time that you use your can, the first few squirts are going to be the pressure inside the can pushing all of those dry paint flecks out of the can and onto your miniature. And that's where you get those kind of crusty looking miniatures, if we've all had that experience. So what I always recommend doing is you turn the can upside down and spray until it's just propellant comes out. Once it's just propellant, you know that your can is clean and clear and ready to go, and then you can spray with your miniature. So now we're going to talk about that Zenithal. So what I'm trying to do is hit the model from this angle. So it's about, I'm not very good at degrees to be honest with you, but about this. We will be doing a little bit underneath too, but all we're trying to do is accentuate the higher parts of the miniature and leave the underneath parts a little bit darker. We're not talking about black, we're not going like crazy Zenithal here. You will have the grey colour on. As you can see, that direction is going to start bringing up all of that detail. I'm going to carry that around behind him. Make sure you're getting all of the raised areas. Hopefully this is coming through on camera, how this is working. Obviously, once we get a little bit higher, we can get a little bit heavier over the shoulders and his face, where obviously more of the light's going to hit. There we go. There is our primed great unclean one. You see what I mean? He's still mostly grey, but he is darker underneath his belly, underneath the folds of fat, underneath his butt is a darker colour than the kind of bright at the top. It's not super extreme, but that's all we need to get done. And that is it. That is how I begin the process of painting my miniatures. This is my spray job. So this model is now ready to be painted, obviously when it's dry. Okay, so here is the great unclean one in hopefully better lighting. So you can see the result of the spraying. And like I was talking about before, he's not like a solid coat of white. You know, like if you sprayed him properly, he would just look like the base. You know what I mean? That solid block of white colour. And obviously that wouldn't be as good for things like contrast or shape. But as it stands, you can see all the detail on the model so perfectly because of the style. Like I said, the majority of them is still that grey colour. But all the cracks, all the recesses, all of the everything is super nice, super dark. And it's going to, like I said, take contrast and stuff so well. So super happy with how he turned out. Hope that gave you a better example of how it works. Let's move on to a different miniature now. Of course, I want to show you guys a variety of miniatures. So we're also going to be doing it on this Cavalier Champion character from the new Cities of Sigmar range. So beautiful model on horse. And like I said, all I'm going to do is get a solid coat of black on this. Okay, here is that cavalry miniature we talked about. So exactly the same process. Sure I get it in frame. Aiming for the higher bits. There you go. There's our finished. Will it come into? There you go. There's our finished sprayed. As you can see, underneath of it is nice and dark. A little bit of shadow and shade, but up top it's nice and bright. She is ready to receive contrast and get all her base coats on. Super crisp, super clean, super easy to do. The model looks great. You can see in between all the rocks is all still dark and everything like that. It's not like a solid coat of white or a solid coat of grey. It's left all of those little cracks and stuff nice and dark, which is going to look really good when we get to the shade or the contrast stage. So the same thing with this beaut here. As you can see, it is really nicely base coated, ready to rock and roll. But as you can see, all the detail is showing through. There's darkness left underneath the horse, in between things like, you know, chainmail, inside the strands of armor and all that kind of stuff is nice and dark. Look at how well that base looks. Look how ready it is to be painted up. Underneath, super dark. On the top, nice and bright. Going to take a grey contrast really well, or a nice dry brush or shade or whatever. Another thing people go on about is, why do I spray black and then I spray my metallic colours? I've talked to it basically through why I do it a whole bunch, but people are still curious. So what I've got here is, if it'll focus on me, these pieces and not my jumper. Hello? No, it doesn't want to focus on these. Okay, so I've got these two Dreadnought front chassis left over spare from my kit. What I'm going to do is I'm going to spray one black and then gold over the top of it, and one I'm going to spray pure gold, and then I'll go up to the proper, like underneath the camera, and I'll show you the details. I'm going to spray one of these pieces black now. This is once again, like I talked about, what something looks like it's like too much spray, but because it's a miniature spray, it's really thin and will dry really thin. And like I said, that point will become clear later on. So I'm just going to wait for this to dry, and then we'll do the gold coat over the top of it. Okay, now on to showing you that gold stuff. So will this focus for me? It's not a very like big or intriguing part, so it doesn't particularly want to focus. But anyway, same idea. I've got a kind of Retributor Armor Gold from Games Workshop. Absolutely incredible spray. Very expensive for a can of spray. But with the amount of time it saves you on things like a Stormcaster or Custodes Army, I would think it would be worth it. So make sure, once again, clear it out. Make sure you're just getting nice, clean gold spray through it. And then all we're going to do is give it a nice coat of gold. So here's a quick example of what it looks like after it's sprayed. Crisp, clean, looks well. That's it over the black. So now I'm going to spray it just over grey plastic and show you the difference. So there's the gold. First of all, I just don't like how it looks over the bright grey. It's a fairly ugly looking gold colour compared to side by side. There's the black one. You see that it makes a huge difference. And I know which colour I like more, but like I said, we're going to go up underneath the proper cameras and give you a proper look at these after this. But there's the result of the two different sprays. Now, on to these guys. So I think it's fairly obvious which one was base coated with black and then gold, and which one was done with just gold. It's up to you which of these two colours you prefer, but I definitely prefer this one. I think it looks beautiful. It's a really nice place to start the shading process and get the models like layered up. But as you can see, it makes a clear difference. And even then, even though I try to get a solid coat of gold, you can see that like in the little holes and stuff, that's the grey plastic showing through. Whereas on these ones, the black caught all of those lines and it's just the gold on the top. So that will take, like I said, a contrast or something a hell of a lot better than that will. Okay guys, we return to you from the spraying process. Hopefully that gave you a better indication of my process and how I go about getting my miniatures ready to begin the painting process. We've got a great unclean one here, obviously the Ride Master from the City of Sigmar, and then I showed you the reasons why I do black before I do gold. Hopefully all of that made sense and you've learned a little bit something about that. Now it's time to go on to those ever important questions. Okay, so I just want to start off this with a caveat that this is just my opinion on spraying. These are some of the expertise that I've picked up over the last kind of 20 years of doing the hobby, the things that work for me. I'm not saying they're going to work entirely for you, or at least they're not the only way of doing things. So if you have a different way and you enjoy spraying that way, please do continue that. Use the method that works best for you. I'm just trying to help people out here that may be struggling a little bit. So the first point, and it's a point I covered at the beginning of it, is one of the most common questions is, why do I spray black and then spray my metallic colors? And like I said, I went into a little bit at the beginning of the video, but to give you a clear indication, when you spray the black, you're trying to get a complete, consistent, solid coat. This is actually your base coat. After that, we're going to put the gold on top of it. We're not trying to get a super solid coat of gold. And if you do get a super solid coat of gold, it is going to be incredibly smooth, meaning things like contrast and shades will not stick to it very well. They will slide off of the beautiful metallic sheen, pool in really weird areas, and not sound very nice. I also dislike the color you get from spraying gold over plastic or spraying silver over plastic. I find it to be too bright. It looks more yellow. It looks too gray for me those ways. So I think we're putting the black on, you get much nicer colors. Okay, one of the next questions I get asked a whole lot is weather and how that affects your spraying. And it's really dependent on your personal environment. So I am from Ireland. It is a wet and windy country, but we do not have kind of crazy extremes. We don't have 30-degree heat and we don't have -10 colds. Those are European for any of you Americans out there. That doesn't make any sense too. That's really cold and really hot. Yeah, we don't have the crazy extremes. What I do is, the most important thing is, try and find somewhere sheltered to spray. So if you saw at the beginning of this video, there's a bunch of crap in the background while I was spraying. That's my garden shed. I've put up a tarp to cover up most of the crap, but that's where I go to spray because it is in, out of the wind, and on other days, out of the rain. It is a nice enclosed area. The main door of it is completely wide open, so I get lots of ventilation, and it's really good. When people talk about temperature being a huge factor, it generally doesn't make a huge difference unless you're in those countries that are like frozen in winter and completely scorching in summer. In those cases, I don't have the expertise to tell you guys what you should and shouldn't do. In Ireland, all I can say to you is, which will count for England and France and Germany and all those other places as well, is that it's more important to keep the can at a consistent temperature. You do not want your can, your spray, being too hot or too cold. So although I spray in my garden shed, my cans are not stored there. They are stored inside the house. So they're kept at a kind of crisp 20-degree heat or whatever. I just bring those out with me, make sure I give them a nice shake. I'm inside like from the wind and the rain, and I give the model a spray. If you do this, then you're going to be peachy. I know not everybody has access to a place they can spray from, and if you are struggling with that, if it is a rainy and windy day, don't battle the elements. Don't go out in wind and rain and try and spray your model outdoors. You will just have an awful time. Once the spray hits the model and then the raindrops hit the model, you're just going to have this like Dalmatian effect across it. It's going to be awful. Just try and be patient and wait for a clear day. I know that's not a good thing to do, but obviously you can stockpile a bunch of miniatures that you want to get sprayed, wait for the right opportunity, and then get a whole batch of stuff sprayed at one time. I have also been subject to doing that. If you're living in an apartment block and maybe you don't have access to stuff like that, I lived in an apartment for 10 years in town, in the city centre here in Ireland, in Dublin. And what I used to do is I used to go to the local bin area. So downstairs in the basement, there was a place with all the disgusting smelly bins. It was a well-ventilated, enclosed, temperature-controlled area. Nobody cared if I was down there spraying. The smell of fumes was better than the spray of the bins. I wore a mask to keep myself safe. The lights were brilliant and it was fantastic. So if you're stuck in an apartment and you don't think you have anywhere to spray, perhaps your bins are a good place to do it. Just don't hit the walls. They don't like that. Okay, one of the next questions that gets asked is, can you use any spray paint, any primer, and use it as a miniature primer? And the question is, once again, that it depends. I mean, obviously Midwinter Minis swore for many years that the Halford's primer was the best primer on the market. Do I agree with that? Probably not, to be honest with you. I'm one that kind of likes to side on caution. If you think about it, some of the miniatures, some of the individual miniature spray, you take an Imperial Knight for instance, is like €150. Do you really want to cheap out on things like the glue and spray to put them all together and get it base coated? Do you really want to risk getting them all covered in flaky glue or gunked up with thick spray? I personally think that as an investment, a can of spray is a great thing to get. You get a can of black spray, you know, you can spray 100, 150 models with that spray before you need to get another one. If you divide that down by the number of like spray can price versus number of miniatures, you're talking like 10, 12 cents per model to spray. That's a price that I'm willing to spend in order to know that I'm going to get consistent, high quality coats of paint on my miniatures and ready to begin the painting process. Maybe that's not what everybody wants to hear, but it's genuinely how I feel. You won't find me with a cheap can of spray from a hardware store. It'll be Games Workshop spray, or as you can see in the start of this video, I've started to trickle over to the Color Forge sprays as well. I find them so far to be very, very good. I'm getting used to the black being matte though. That's a bit of a change for me, but yeah. Like I said, because I haven't tried all those other sprays, I can't say this one is good and that one is bad, but I can tell you with a certain amount of degree of confidence that the Games Workshop sprays and the Color Forge sprays are really good and give you consistent results. So because I've tested that, this is the only piece of advice that I'm going to give you guys. So hopefully that's not annoying to you guys. I'm just being as honest as I can here. Don't use bad spray. It'll ruin your toys. Okay, one of the next questions I have is, if you only have black spray, can you paint the Zenithal bit on? The answer is yes. If you look up all of the slap chop style painting videos, and there's a whole heap of them out there, you will notice that these miniatures are sprayed black and then they are dry brushed through kind of like a dark grey, a light grey, and then at the very end a white. This idea gives you the kind of Zenithal spray that you would get from a can. It's a little bit chalkier and it's a little bit rougher, which is a style unto itself. I've seen people do incredible things with slap chop out there. Their models look fantastic. I'm not downplaying that at all, but it's also another step to do, whereas, you know, a spray can only takes a couple of seconds. Dry brushing the model up through those couple of degrees of white and greys will take a little bit of time, but yes, you can absolutely do it. You've just got to decide whether your time is more valuable or whether you're willing to spend the extra money to get your can of spray. Once again, that's a personal choice and it's totally up to you. But the answer is yes, you can absolutely dry brush your miniature. And like I said, just go type slap chop painting into the search bar on YouTube. There's a whole heap of videos out there. And the first part of all of those videos will be how to prep the model to begin slap chop, which will be the dry brushing stage. And that should teach you everything you need to know. Another question I get asked a lot is, do I ever use or do I like brush on primers? So the answer is yes, there are brush on primers. Do I use them? No. No. Do they work? Yes, to a degree. What a lot of people try and do with brush on primers is try and get a solid coat. You will not get a solid coat with a brush on primer, not without kind of having a lot of paint on, a lot of junked up paint. All you need to do is have a rough, even a streaky coat of paint across your miniature, something to give other paints something to grip to and then like paint over. It will not work for things like contrast. You're not going to get a smooth enough coat with something like grey cere or a white to make contrast look good over the top of it. I just don't believe that's going to be, like, you can try it, but my guess is you will get rather frustrated rather quickly and give up on your attempt. I don't think it's going to be what you want to do. And like I said, it's all about time. what is your time worth? You can spend €13.50 to get a can of black spray from Games Workshop, or you can hand prime miniatures. Like hand priming 10-20 miniatures could take a couple of hours if you want to get a nice consistent coat. So that's a couple of hours versus 3 minutes with a spray can. And it's not a fun couple of hours. It's not like layering up and you're enjoying the painting process. It's just tedious, boring work. So for me, like I said, I would hold off buying that next character miniature and I would buy a couple of cans of spray instead. I think you'll get more use and more enjoyment out of it if you can do that. Obviously, I learned a new phrase recently. It was Medusa that said this to me, and it made me think. I've been thinking about it now for quite a long time now. And it was like a wealth thing. It's like it depends whether you're monetary wealthy or if you're time wealthy, if that makes sense. I think I said it wrong, but you know what I mean. Obviously, if you don't have a lot of spare cash to your name, but you've got a lot of time spare, then maybe doing it that way is a better choice for you. And I've been thinking about that quite a lot over the last few days. So thank you for making me think about that. But for me, it would always be get a spray can. That's my personal choice. Okay guys, that is the best tips and tricks that I can think of to hopefully help you guys on your journey to getting beautifully sprayed miniatures ready to start the painting process. I hope you learned something from it. If you enjoyed it, please do help me push it out to more people. Tell people about it, and then make sure that you like, comment and subscribe. Liking a video, commenting on a video and being subscribed to the channel pushes the video to more and more and more people. I'm running a little experiment with this video where I'm going to let this be the only video on my channel this week from Saturday to Saturday. So I've never had a video have an entire week worth of being in the spotlight on my channel before. So I'm very curious to know whether it will work or whether it's going to fall flat in its face. And that comes down to you guys. So if you could help me out with that, that would be fantastic. And also, if you want to help support the channel in a myriad of other ways, you can check out things like my Patreon and becoming a channel member. If you need to know where to get your hands on some sprays, me personally, I can get them from local independents. So over here in Ireland, Air Hobbies has become the distributor for the Colour Forge paints. I'm not affiliated with them in any way, shape or form. I don't get a kickback from you buying them from there. I'm just letting you know that if you do live in Ireland and those sprays are something that interests you now, they are the ones that are selling them around the country. So maybe that's the best to go. If you're in England, try getting stuff from Element Games. I do have an affiliate link for that, so you can buy a couple of cans of spray from them there. Using my link down below, I will get a little bit of kickback. It'll cost you not a penny more. In fact, ordering stuff from Element Games usually saves you upwards of 15% on your orders. So it's a pretty great way to get your toys. All right, guys, thank you so much for listening to me ramble for the last 10 minutes. Hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you in the next video.